The letter she didn't send. Continuation. Last time on Amira's story, she quietly left a story on Miss Clara's desk. The class heard her words, but no one knew they were hers. That night, her heart full of hidden hope, Amira wrote a letter to her late father. And still she kept writing. I miss how you'd always know what to say when I was scared. I miss your long stories, especially the ones you made up just for me. The ones where I was the hero, even when I didn't feel brave. I miss your voice, Baba. I'm scared I'm starting to forget it. She remembered how he'd hold her when she cried, how he'd lift her into the air when she felt small and whisper, "You're stronger than you know." She could almost hear it now, that steady warm tone, that half smile when he said her name, that scent of oud and worn paper, and cocoa butter on his sleeves. The tears spilled freely. They splattered onto the page, ink bleeding into soft pools. She didn't wipe them away. Amira pressed her palm against the page, smearing a name she hadn't dared say in so long. The grief wasn't fresh. It was old, but it hadn't softened. It had just gotten quieter and heavier. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, took a shuddering breath and continued. You used to tell me that stories could heal, that if I ever got lost I could write my way back. I didn't believe you then. I wish I had. Maybe I wouldn't have been so scared to keep writing after you left. Her pencil hovered. The tears had soaked through the bottom half of the page. But she wasn't finished. Sometimes I wonder if you'd still be proud of me. Even now. Even after everything. I haven't done anything special. I'm not top of my class. I don't talk much. Most days I just try to disappear. But sometimes, I write. I write like you taught me. And when I do, Baba, it almost feels like I still matter. She broke then. A sob escaped, sharp, cracked, pulled from the pit of her belly. She dropped the pencil. It rolled across the floor. Amira curled into herself, pressing her forehead to the page, tears soaking through the corners. There were no words now. Only ache. Only the ghost of arms she would never feel again. The warmth of a lap she would never rest in again. The voice that would never say, I'm here again. And yet, even through the pain she kept writing. Her fingers shook. Her eyes blurred. But her heart poured onto the page like it had been holding back a flood. The tears slowed eventually. Not because the pain had faded, but because she had poured enough of it out to breathe again. Amira sat up slowly, her body sore from how tightly she'd held herself. Her fingers brushed across the page, now damp and crinkled, and the smeared ink whispered back at her like a voice from far away. She picked up the pencil once more. Do you remember the last thing you said to me? You came into my room after dinner. I was sulking because I got a bad grade on my science test. You didn't scold me. You just knelt down and said, Marks don't measure your light, Amira. I didn't understand then. But I think I do now. I think the light is what you leave behind. And your light still finds me, even in the dark. She stared at the words. Her heart throbbed with the memory. That night had been like any other. And then it hadn't. Her father had died the next day. And the light in her chest had dimmed ever since. But something was stirring now. Not a glow. Not yet. But a flicker. A warm breath. A pulse. She wiped her cheeks with her sleeve. Took a deep breath. Held the letter close to her heart for a long, quiet moment. Then she folded it carefully. Gently. Like something sacred. She didn't sign it. Didn't date it. Didn't seal it in an envelope. She just tucked it between the last page of her notebook and the cover. It was a letter she would never send. But one she would never forget. She didn't sleep right away. Amira sat there for a long time, her arms wrapped around her knees, her head resting on the spine of the notebook. The house breathed around her with creaking distant footsteps from above, the buzz of the flickering bulb. And inside her, something had changed. Not all the sadness was gone. Her heart still ached. She still missed him. His voice, his presence, the way he'd pull her into a hug with both arms and kiss the top of her head, even when she pretended to be too old for it. But she had written to him. And in doing that, it felt like she had reached him somehow. Somewhere. Amira opened the notebook again. Not to read the letter. Not to erase it. But to turn the page. A blank sheet greeted her, smooth and quiet. This time she didn't hesitate. She wrote the first line of a new story. A story about a girl who built a boat out of broken things. Torn pages, empty cups, broken pencils, and set it sailing into the sky. And as she wrote, a single tear slid down her cheek. Not from pain, but from the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was no longer writing from grief, but from memory, from love. She fell asleep with the notebook still open, a pencil still in her hand, and the quiet knowledge that her words mattered, even if no one else ever saw them, even if they were only ever meant for her. Scene 3. The morning after. The sun filtered through the thin curtain like it had every morning since she moved into her aunt's house, but today the light felt different. Softer. Warmer. Or maybe it was Amira who was different. She opened her eyes slowly, her lashes sticky with dried tears. Her cheek pressed against the spiral of her notebook. A faint blue smudge traced the side of her face where ink had bled into skin. Her fingers remained curled around the edge of the page she'd written last night, the one addressed to her father. She didn't remember falling asleep. Only the aching in her chest, the warmth in her eyes, the way her hand wouldn't stop moving until the final period settled like a sigh at the bottom of the page. Amira blinked, sat up slowly. Her back ached from sleeping in a half-seated position. A blanket had been draped over her shoulders, Hafsa's probably. For a long moment she didn't move. She just looked down at the notebook in her lap. The letter was still there. Folded. Tucked. Safe. She didn't read it again. She didn't have to. It wasn't written for reading. It was written for letting go. Her stomach growled, but she stayed still, reliving the sensation of the pencil in her hand, the tears on her face, the certainty in her words. Something in her had shifted. Subtle. Unseen. But real. She got up and went to brush her teeth, tie her scarf and rinse her face. When she returned, she didn't tuck the notebook away beneath her mattress. She placed it beside her books. On top. At breakfast, no one mentioned the letter. No one had seen it. But her aunt paused when Amira quietly offered to pack Hafsa's school bag. It wasn't much. Just a gesture. But in this house, kindness was currency. Her aunt nodded. Thank you. Just 2 words. But they felt different today. Like something shifting in the current between them. The walk to school was dusty and loud. Street vendors were already shouting. A goat bleated from the alleyway behind the tailor shop. Cars honked as they weaved through puddles that hadn't dried from last night's rain. Amira walked quietly beside Hafsa, her bag a little heavier than usual. Not from books, but from something unspoken. From the letter she hadn't sent. From the words that had finally come out. From the knowledge that she had written anyway. Hafsa skipped a few steps ahead, then circled back. Are you going to write another story soon? She asked. Her voice hushed like she was sharing a secret. Amira looked at her. Maybe. Hafsa smiled wide. I hope it's about the mango trees again. But this time they talk. Amira chuckled softly. Maybe they will. That smile. That spark of belief in Hafsa's eyes. It wasn't much, but it made her shoulders relax. At school, the gates were crowded with noisy students. Layla stood by the front steps, surrounded by her usual group. Amira slipped past them unnoticed, just as she liked it. But today she felt something different. Not braver, just more present. More awake in her own skin. In homeroom, Miss Clara handed out a new assignment sheet. Today's prompt, she said with a smile, is simple. Write about a room that remembers you. A room that knows you, even if no one else does. Amira's breath caught in her chest. A room that remembers me. Her father's study came back in a rush. The thick carpet, the worn armchair, the smell of oud and orange peel and polished wood. The books. The quiet. The safe. Her hand twitched. The pencil moved. She didn't start writing right away. Instead, Amira sat there, letting the memory wash over her. The golden handles on her father's bookshelf. The dust motes dancing in the light of the high windows. The creak of the leather seat he'd pull her into, even when she didn't ask. She remembered once crawling under his desk with a book, just to be near him. He had laughed, lifted her gently onto his lap. This chair is big enough for both our stories, he had said. That line repeated in her mind now. She turned to a fresh page in her notebook. And slowly, almost without realizing it, she wrote the sentence. There was once a room that knew her laughter. The pencil moved more easily now. She described the feel of the carpet under bare feet, the sound of her father's pen scratching across important papers, the way he'd tuck his phone away when she walked in, as if she were the most urgent thing in the world, as if her presence was enough, as if she was enough. It wasn't a full story yet, just fragments, but it flowed. Not from pressure, not from fear, but from memory, from love. At the end of class, Miss Clara glanced at her desk. Amira's notebook was still open. She hesitated for a second, then closed it gently and slipped it into her bag. She didn't hide it this time. And when Miss Clara passed by her desk, she paused, gave her a look that wasn't praise. It was understanding. And that was enough. At recess, Amira didn't run to her quiet corner like she usually did. Instead, she lingered near the hallway where students posted their contest entries. Layla's newest story, typed, printed and highlighted, was pinned right at the top. Amira read a few lines. They were good. But something inside her didn't shrink this time. Instead, a quiet question whispered, what if mine belonged there too? Not for applause, not for praise, but for truth. Later in science class, she caught herself writing something in the margins of her notes. Not formulas, not diagrams, but a scene. A little girl hiding mango seeds in a cracked backyard. Her mother watching from the window, arms crossed. The seeds whispering beneath the soil. Grow anyway. She smiled, then quickly scratched it out just in case anyone saw. But she didn't tear the page. She let the words stay. After school, Hafsa tugged on her sleeve as they waited for their aunt. Did you write something today? Amira nodded. Can I hear it later? Maybe, Amira said. And for the first time in a long time she meant it. That night, after chores and a hurried dinner, Amira climbed onto the roof. The sky stretched open wide and full of stars. It reminded her of the first time she looked up after her father passed, and wondered if he was somewhere beyond still watching. She took her notebook, opened to the page from the night before. The letter to her father. Her fingers trembled as she read it again. Dear Baba, I miss you more than words can carry. The world doesn't feel safe anymore. Sometimes I pretend you're still around, humming in the kitchen, sitting in your big chair. Do you remember the day I fell from the swing and scraped my knee? You picked me up, wiped my tears and said, writers need scars. They make stories stronger. I think maybe that's true. She read the words out loud, softly. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. The wind carried her words away, like prayers wrapped in paper. Downstairs, Hafsa was already asleep. Her aunt snored faintly in the next room. The night was still. Amira scribbled beneath the letter. A story began to bloom. Not polished, not perfect, but hers. The girl in the story didn't have much. Just scraps of paper and pockets of time. But she had something stronger than doubt. She had persistence. The next morning, Amira packed her notebook before anything else. She didn't know if she'd show it to anyone. She didn't know if she'd ever win a contest. But she knew one thing. She had something to say. And slowly, finally, she was learning how to say it. Scene 4. The question in her eyes. The sun rose like any other morning, indifferent to the storm Amira had weathered the night before. Its light filtered lazily through the curtains, casting golden strips across the cracked floor. A rooster crowed somewhere down the street. Pots clinked in a neighbor's yard. Life, it seemed, was content to move forward as if nothing monumental had happened the night before. But for Amira, everything felt altered. Not loudly, not outwardly, but in the quiet way a crack in glass changes everything about how you see through it. She had cried herself into silence the night before, her cheeks streaked with salt, the letter to her father resting beside her like a long-lost conversation finally spoken. She had folded it, not neatly but with care creased by trembling fingers. And though she hadn't signed it, she had poured every ounce of herself into the words. She woke up without an alarm, something inside her pulsing with a low, persistent energy. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't exactly joy. It was purpose. She dressed slowly, deliberately. She chose the navy hijab today, the one with the tiny embroidered stars her mother had sewn in one evening when they had both been quieter than usual. Amira had always liked how it made her feel a little more whole, like wearing the sky. The streets were the same. The cracks in the sidewalk. the boys playing with sticks and bottle caps, the elderly man who sold fried yams with a quiet grunt. But as Amira walked past them, something stirred inside her. It wasn't the world that had changed. It was her way of looking at it. She passed by a small alley with peeling posters. One of them was for a storytelling competition. The words barely registered, but they stayed in her periphery like an echo waiting to come back. At school, everything was as it had always been. Layla laughed a little too loudly. Samira rolled her eyes during morning announcements. A boy named Idris flicked pencil shavings onto the floor and blamed it on the air. But when Amira entered the classroom, she didn't go straight to her desk. She paused. She took a deep breath. And for the first time in weeks, she walked past her seat, the quiet corner by the window, and placed her notebook on Miss Clara's desk. "Would you read this?" she asked. Miss Clara looked up, surprised but smiling. "Of course, Amira. Thank you." No one noticed. Or so she thought. The day passed slowly. Not because it was dull, but because Amira's mind wasn't in the classroom. It was in the letter. It was in the story she just submitted. It was replaying phrases from the night before, lines she didn't even remember writing. There are days when silence is not peace, but pressure. I miss you like the moon misses the sun. They never really get to meet, do they? I'm still your girl, even when I feel invisible. During lunch, Amira sat alone, but not out of habit. She wanted space. She needed it. Her thoughts were loud enough. She took out her notebook again. Not the worn one she used daily, but the letter. She reread it in whispers, her fingers tracing the edges. A few students glanced at her. One girl whispered, "She's always writing." But no one laughed. Not today. After school, something unusual happened. Miss Clara asked her to stay behind. Amira's heart leapt. Had she read it already? Was it bad? Too personal? The room emptied, the chairs clattering against the desks as students rushed out. Miss Clara walked slowly to Amira's desk. "I read it," she said simply. Amira swallowed. "Okay. Amira, that story, that letter, it wasn't just good. It was real." Amira's throat tightened. "You don't just write," Miss Clara continued. "You say something. You make people feel like they've been seen. That's rare." She handed Amira a small journal, hardcover, navy with silver-lined pages. "This is for students who make me feel something," she said. "Please fill it." There was only one name written before hers. Layla. But instead of jealousy, Amira felt something warmer. Belonging. That night, the letter didn't stay on her desk. It went into her drawer beneath her scarves, where she knew it would be safe. She didn't reread it. She didn't need to. She knew it by heart. Instead, she opened the new journal. Page 1. She wrote, "My name is Amira Ahmed. I am not loud. I am not fast. I do not sparkle in crowds. But I see things. I feel things. And today I believe that matters." The next day, she borrowed a book from the school library. Not because it was assigned, but because she wanted to know how another girl in another story handled pain. She underlined sentences. She wrote notes in the margins. And later on her way home, she helped an old woman carry groceries up a flight of stairs, just because she looked tired. The woman said, "Thank you, my dear." And Amira whispered, "You're welcome," like it was a secret she had kept inside too long. In the weeks that followed, she didn't become popular, or loud, or suddenly confident. But when a new student entered the class and looked nervous, Amira was the one who offered her seat. When a teacher asked for a volunteer to read the homework aloud, she raised her hand, once. When she saw Layla alone one day, crying silently in the corner, she left a tissue and a note. You don't have to explain. Some days are just heavy. Miss Clara began to assign more creative writing. Each time Amira submitted something brave. She wasn't hiding anymore. Not fully. But what mattered most wasn't that other people were seeing her.